On April 29, 2010, 6 prisoners held a peaceful protest against conditions in the hole at SCI Dallas in Dallas, Pennsylvania. These men are known as Dallas Six. Dallas Six and other prisoners contributed to the Human Rights Coalition investigative report detailing barbaric and inhumane conditions. The allegations included starvation, feces and urine in food, male destruction, brutal assaults by guards, medical neglect, use of a torture chair, and coerced suicides of prisoners. After covering their cell windows, they demanded outside intervention. They feared for their lives as they had been threatened by guards who were beating prisoners whose names were in the report. The unarmed prisoners were viciously attacked and extracted from cells by armed guards in military gear using military weapons. This was a planned retaliation. While all of the guards involved in the incident admitted they suffered no injuries, Dallas Six were left bloody, naked, with burnt skin, and in pain with no medical treatment. HRC filed a criminal complaint, and Carrington Keys filed a civil lawsuit. The district attorney, state police, and DOC formed an alliance to cover up the abuse and the district attorney's negligence. The DA's office had received complaints prior to April asking for an investigation of the prison, but chose to turn a blind eye. Instead of investigating, the men were charged with riot, and one of them, Carrington Keys, was given additional charges of assault. After 6 years, many court appearances, and an enormous waste of taxpayer money, in April 2016, a trial was held, ending in a hung jury. Riot charges were dismissed, but the DA's office decided to retry Mr. Keys on assault charges. Mr. Keys has active civil lawsuits in the Luzerne County courts that were filed before this incident and after this incident. While he was awaiting trial, he was retaliated against by being put in solitary, and legal materials for trial were destroyed. The defendants being sued include DOC staff involved in the 2010 attacks, District Attorney Salavantis, and her father-in-law James McGrady, who is a former prison official. The DA's office continues to abuse official power and perpetuate prosecutorial vindictiveness. These video clips were put together to refute DOC claims and expose the courts were manipulated to retaliate against prisoners who exposed their crimes to the public. The first clip is staff psychologist speaking with Dwayne Peters. The psychologist and lieutenant went to each door asking prisoners to remove the coverings from their windows. Mr. Peters gives reasons why the windows were covered.
Mr. Peter,
Excuse me. Speak to the man. We want to talk to the Luzerne County Public Defender's Office. We want to talk to our attorneys.
you want to talk to your attorneys at the...
Yeah, we want to talk to the Luzerne County Public Defender's Office. These men are abusing their powers and they're retaliating against us for paperwork that's been filed. A lot of us have cases that are dismissed. A lot of us are waiting for detention and we're not getting no kind of service. Until y'all do that, we don't have nothing to say. We want to talk to our attorney.
Is there any other way we could establish contact
We want
to
to
resolve
talk
this?
to the Luzerne County Public Defender's Office, who are our guardians and who speak for us. We'll speak through them.
Inmate Peter, this is Sergeant Buck. You are very active in an unauthorized group activity. You cannot cover your door, so I cannot see into your cell. This is a violation of the inmate handbook you were given in the 6.5.1.
And let us talk to our attorney. We want to talk to our counsel. You denying us our right to talk to counsel?
Next is the Correctional Emergency Response Team, or CERT, prepping before extracting Carrington Keys. Pay close attention to the conditions of their uniforms now and after they exit the cells, because it is very important to the guards' claims of assault.
You will enter the cell and pin the inmate to the wall or the floor. As soon as the inmate is handcuffed, he shall be moved off his stomach. Team member 2, Officer Morelli, you will go high right and be responsible for a weapon if there is one. Officer Morelli is also equipped with a baton, In the event we have to try and apply OC into the cell, and inmate Keys has the wicket and cell door covered and blocked, we'll attempt to use the baton to clear the wicket so OC can be applied into the cell. Team member 3 with the handcuffs and tether is Officer Konchnik. He will go high left, and when the handcuffs are secured, we'll sound off hand secured. Team member 4 with the handheld EBIT is Officer Krogel. He will go low right. Team member 5 with the leg shackles is Officer Edmond. He will go low left, and when the leg shackles are secured, we'll sound off leg secure.
The reason the case was initiated is because the DLC told the court they were forced to enter the cells because the windows were covered. Cell extractions began nearly 2 hours after the psychologist's walkthrough. During these 2 hours, the men were pepper sprayed through the vents in the backs of the cells, which is prohibited. The DLC was well aware the windows were uncovered when they came to extract, but the court was never shown any videos or told this fact until years later.
Inmate Keys, we're going to conduct a strip search and you're going to be moved to a different cell. Going to comply? Remove the thing from your face. We'll do a strip search. You're going to move to a different cell.
You will hear the lieutenant say, "Okay." The prisoner will look back because he was sprayed from the vent behind him. The lieutenant spoke in code on camera. During trial, we learned "okay" was a signal.
Lieutenant Roser to Officer Romanowski. Okay.
Note the team formation when entering. The basis of their assault charge is that urine and feces was thrown on them before they got in the door. They claimed they were drenched about the head and on their uniforms. Sergeant Buck, who was on the floor cutting the sheets, claimed he was also the cameraman and was hit in the head. The officer carrying the shock shield entered the cell first, which subdued him, and the others took him down.
Get him on the floor! Inmate Keys, stop resisting! Stop resisting! Inmate Keys!
He is screaming because they are tasing his genitals, as they did to all the men, which is illegal.
Come out slow, come out slow.
Upon the team exiting, notice the condition of their uniforms. No visible moisture or feces.
Hold on, guys. Hold on. Hold on. Wait for the team to get up.
Get in front.
You all right? Okay, go ahead. Hold on. Don't run them. Slow down. All right.
The debriefing explains what happened. Notice no one mentioned an assault. No one reported directly to medical or changed their uniform, which is a biohazard if one were truly contaminated.
We have assembled for the debriefing. The time is approximately 10:52 hours. After I call your name, step out and state whether you sustained any injuries and that your equipment is accounted for and functional. Team member 1, Officer Ballard.
Equipment accounted for, no injuries to this officer.
Team member 2, Officer Morelli.
No injuries.
Team member 3, Officer Konchnik.
No injuries.
Team member 4, Officer Provo.
Equipment operational injuries.
Team member 5, Officer Hedman.
No injuries. Leg shock has been left on the inmate.
Team member 6, Sergeant Buck.
Camera operational, no injuries.
Inmate Keys was removed from cell KB42, placed into the RIP treatment belt, and then placed in KA cell 35, or 27. The inmate did not comply with the orders given. An OC and E-bid were used upon the cell extraction. The inmate was examined and decontaminated by RN Tengowski after the incident. Does anyone have any concerns? Initially, when we went up to key cell KB42, we had his mattress blocking the cell door. He had his jumpsuit and blanket stuffed in the cell door. He had sheets and t-shirts, had the cell door tied off. Initially, when we tried to open the door, we couldn't get it open. Sergeant Buck was able to unjam the door, and we eventually opened the door. Prior to the door being open, we applied OC into the cell. It was ineffective. He had a t-shirt around his face. He had additional clothing on. He also had feces smeared all over him. And when we opened up the cell door, initially it only opened a few inches due to it being he had it blockaded. We were able to apply some OC through the opening in the cell door. That was also ineffective. Once the cell door was unjammed, the cell extraction team entered the cell. Inmate Keys continued to resist. The cell extraction team used the minimal amount of force necessary to restrain inmate Keys. He was then assisted to his feet and escorted to the KA day room, where he was placed on the floor, where his clothes were cut off. A strip search was conducted. He was decontaminated and a medical assessment conducted by RN Tengowski. He was also placed in a RIP treatment belt and leg shackles and escorted to KA 27, where he was placed in the cell without further incident. The door was secured. Sergeant Buck continued to record at the cell.
Keys, Apple Fox 4010, KB 42 cell.
The cell inspection was quiet. No mention or citing of a receptacle that was used to throw anything. No mention or visible urine or feces on the floor or any visible moisture.
5. Uniform 5, Charlie Block, 10-2. 6. Dog Annex, 10-2. 7.
Now a word from Carrington Keys.
After watching the video, it is clear that their story that I struck 6 officers with urine and feces is a lie, since they all had on helmets, face masks, body armor, gloves, and other protective equipment. Somehow they all reported to medical that hours later they were hit in the head with a cup of urine and feces. For something to be factual, it must first be physically and mathematically possible. The cameraman testified that he was struck in the back of the head with feces. Don't you find it kind of odd that I could throw something through 5 men and hit the cameraman in the back of the head while the cameraman was facing my cell with the camera in his hand? After reaching the conclusion that their allegations don't make sense, you now may be asking the question, what is this case really about? The officers was mad because they had to come in my cell while my clothing was soiled. The prosecutors are friends and families of Dallas prison officials. I filed lawsuits against both the prosecutors and Dallas prison officials, including the district attorney's father-in-law. So this is a personal vendetta, as the video shows I'm innocent of these charges. The DA told me that I would be given laboratory test results of officers' uniforms. It's been almost 7 years. They still haven't produced the officers' uniforms or any test results because I'm not guilty. I need your help in exposing these facts. My fate depends on you guys out there. They are trying to railroad me. Thank you for watching this video.